Well, you know what? I'm not going to lie. I was pretty excited to come along here to Yamaha's 2025 WR250F launch, and for a few reasons. You know, not just because we're down here on the south coast at Buckenbarra, you know, probably only, what, 5 k's away from where we ran our Transmoto 12-hour event for 10 years. But Lyndon Heffernan's property, you know, who sold that and bought up here, but also, aside from this fabulous bit of terra firma on the south coast, the bike. You know, this has an enormous significance, this WR250F in the Australian market. Has been, you know, consistently since 2001, since it first came out, the biggest selling quarter-litre enduro bike, you know, in the Australian market. And the most significant thing I think about it, you know, is that from the very get-go, like, you know, Yamaha Japan was sort of like, you know, smart enough to actually acknowledge that, you know, they're probably better using the R&D experience here in Australia. Guys like Jeff Ballard, you know, Peter Payne, Stephen Cottrell, you know, Benny Graben, who was here today, Damien Smith, Dewey Morgan, you know, hoping I haven't forgotten any key guys there, but those guys had enormous input into the direction of this bike, and, you know, guess what? Made by Aussie riders, for Aussie riders, sold very well as a result. So one of the cool things of being around, you know, being around the block for a while is seeing something evolve and the evolution process, and, you know, it's been actually really gratifying to see that. I was there and tested the 01 model to start with. You know, I was there when they brought the alloy frame out in 2007. I went in 2015 when, you know, when they sort of revamped the bike that they hadn't done much with since the alloy frame, and put the 4-valve reverse, you know, engine head in it. First time in what, you know, sort of 13, 14 years they dropped that 5-valve engine. And sort of at that point, you know, this bike has been very much aligned as, you know, as a YZF, as a motocrosser with, you know, well, an enduro bike, but with motocross cousin, it's YZF coursing through its veins. And that's been pretty much, you know, the slogan and you know, and the jingo. So, you know, through 15, through 18, it got more torque. Through 2020, you know, like they introduced some adjustability and mapping into the equation and worked a lot on that mass centralisation. And then 22, 2 years ago, I remember testing the bike and saying, wow, this is kind of the end of an evolution. How can it get any better? You know, and the big thing that stood out for me for the 22 model, which was also a standout, was the fact that, you know, Yamaha's traditional stability, that was suddenly coupled with a dose of agility, right? It was lighter and it was kind of, so I kind of thought that was where it ended. So I was really interested to see when we get the 2025 model, which on paper is talking about being, what was it, 3 Jingo, the little slogan, it was sort of, you know, lighter, slimmer and lower centre of gravity, right? So unlike the 450, the 24 450, you know, which got a complete new engine package as well, most of the updates to this 2025 250, you know, have come by way of sort of chassis, suspension, etc. I mean, sure, the engine does get some tweaks. You know, it's got some, like the motocross did last year. In fact, the entire bike replicates a lot of those upgrades that we saw on the 24 motocross bike, its 250 cousin. So the downdraft, you know, creates some sort of mid and top. But really the big thing about this new bike is the chassis, and exactly the same as it was with the WR450F a year ago, completely new alloy chassis with a different philosophy, and it's in that it's a lower seat height, you know, slightly lower at both ends, and which is something actually quite a few of those brands are going towards now, just in view of just, you know, making the thing a little bit more easy to plant your feet on the ground, a little bit less intimidating, I guess, particularly for shorter crew. But there are literally, you know, they're from top to tail, this bike's got a bunch of mods. So look, we're going to have a lot of those kind of things listed. It's not, you know, worth me going through all those tidbits now, but what I wanted, we'll have some of that stuff on the website. What I wanted to do now was, I guess, just sort of bring to life, I guess, what some of these changes they've made for 25 collectively have done. Have they been done harmoniously? Have they been done in a way that improves its enduro performance, or is it, you know, a motocross bike for the bush? And so look, let's start with slimmer, and I think that's probably, you know, the most significant thing about this bike, just looking at it. I mean, it's between the shrouds here, it's 50 mil, just, you know, dwell on that, 50 mil narrower. So when you're standing up, you don't really notice it, other than when you're looking down at the thing. It just looks a lot more of a blade, a lot more cutting edge, a lot more hard nose, call it, you know, European enduro bike. It got that look. Takes away from what I always called the kind of Clydesdale look, I guess, of the, you know, with that hidden fuel cap. But what that means is when you're tucked into the bike and you're doing literally, you know, tucked in, and, you know, you've got your knees up against those shrouds, it, you know, it makes it so much more agile. And the combination of the new flatter seat, a more rounded profile on that seat, the beautiful pocket you sit in there, and the fact that you can lock your knees into those shrouds like that, that's kind of like, it completely changed the riding experience for me. And I've ridden a lot of these things, right, since 2001. So that was bigger than, you know, it sounds, 50 mil sounds big on paper, but actually out in the trails, you know, makes a big difference. I think that agility too, you feel everywhere. You know, on a grass square, you tip it in and you want to square it off, or you're late, or you miss a rut, you know. There's something about the chassis on this 25 model, you know, you're not hacking and seesawing through corners. You set a line, you tip in, you forget it. As I said, there's something about the ergos, it just puts you in exactly the right spot on the seat and you just do your business. I mean, I can't overstate, this bike has got it going on. You know, there's very, very few weak points. A lot of the stuff really is a non-issue because you don't think about it. I went out this morning, got on a little grass track, went for a rip. About 3 corners in, I'm just like, this was an old friend. I've been riding forever. Everything fell to hand, everything's perfect, nothing surprised me, nothing, you know, there was nothing crazy going on. I didn't have to think about the brakes. I didn't have to think about the chassis balance. I didn't have to think about the performance or what I was doing with the front end to get out of ruts. So, you know, whether you're coming out of you were blessed with some amazing loamy chocolate cake mix conditions today, and whether you're coming out of one of these beautiful ruts and you've got a bunch of acceleration bumps, confidence is borrowing. Whether you're standing up and tipping in the bush between trees, super agile, front end feels planted. When we went out this afternoon for a trail ride for a couple of hours, you know, hitting 4th gear erosion mounts, you know, a reminder that despite all that agility in the tight stuff, this thing is just it's a weapon out on the, you know, when you're going out there on fast trail rides, you know. So I came back and said to the boys, I think that was one of the best trail rides I'd had. You know, before that trail ride, you know, doing some stuff here around some of the, you know, the really gnarly technical pebbles in the creek, you know, big stones down there, you know, that's where you kind of feel the agility. You feel the agility in that sort of tight stuff. But then when you get out onto the trail and you realize that something that was so agile in this tight sort of stuff we did around here, and yet has the stability just to be wide open on fast trail, hitting erosion mounds, you know, like hitting logs, hitting stuff you don't see, having to pull up when you're late coming into a corner, hitting shit you know, you really didn't mean to hit, or, you know, it just got you out of trouble. And I think, like I said to the boys, it was one of the best trail rides I've been on because I got myself in trouble a bunch of times, but this thing somehow managed to make me, well, it got me out of trouble, but also gave me the capacity to do things that, you know, I kind of thought were generally a little bit beyond my ability. And I think when a bike can do that and make you feel like you're riding faster than you normally do, but still further in your comfort zone, is quite incredible. I mean, that said, 250s do that, right? That's what quarter litre bikes do. But you know, this thing is really something special. I think the fundamentals from the chassis is great. The suspension, I think the Kayaba stuff now is the gold standard, right? And rightly so. And here's yet another example of a manufacturer who's been able to adapt that stuff on their bike and make it work from everybody from 70 to 100 kilo guys today. Hardly anybody touched a clicker. Nobody bottomed it out. And you know, we had guys like Ben Graham on hand, you know, so nobody bottomed it out at either end, and yet it had that small bump compliance that was pretty special. And then, you know, in keeping with that handling and that stability, going up a bunch of hills today, sort of that 2nd, 3rd gear stuff, and you've got little sharp edge shit, and you're like, how hard should I be hitting that because it's going to dent my rims or give me a flat? It just got to the point where you're just sitting, the front wheel skimming off the ground, and the rear, the shock is just processing shit and it's so compliant that it gives you drive. And, you know, I was constantly eyebrows up going like, holy shit, you know, did that all right today. So, you know, I think it's kind of a landmark bike. You know, like, I've been blowing wind up its arse, and unashamedly so, because this is one of the most impressive tests I think I've been to for quite some time. I think Yamaha have done a fantastic job, and I think the Aussie guys involved, you know, AJ Roberts, who we've had a chat to as well about that process of evolving the thing. Any downsides? Well, you know, whenever you get on a 250, you suddenly find you've got to tap down 2 gears going into a corner. Okay, that's just part of the course. But I think this is a motocross engine. I will say that there's some other 250 enduro bikes out there which out of the box have got a torquier feel off the bottom. Yes, a muffler on this will sort of shift that torque down and give it a little bit more throttle response, but I kind of found today going uphill, hoping I'd pull 3rd or generally jumping down into 2nd. So not a biggie because it revs to 13.5, and this sort of engine loves that. But just a little thing, you know, just a little notable. But I do think that you know, anybody who wants to, you know, race a thing or put an exhaust on it, even trail riders, like I said, you know, instead of tapping on the gearbox so much, having a little bit more of a free-flowing exhaust would just give you that ability to carry third gear a little bit more. But you know, 6-speed transmission, beautifully gapped, absolutely beautifully gapped, not with a like 5 and then it's just a stupid overdrive 6, but good for about 155 k's out in the freeway if you can do that without a radar gun nearby. So you know, I just constantly marvel at the fact I'm talking about something going through tight bush and then doing 155 clicks. You know, something with the agility through tight bush and yet super stable on fire trail. And you know, when you got a bike that's got that kind of window of performance, you know, that forgiving nature, and then underpinning all of that, you know, you've got all the reliability that you know, Yamaha as a brand itself represents, and that this bike, you know, has had a track record. I think you got something pretty damn special on your hands. So I think Yamaha's taken the opportunity. I want to say the right-away retail on it's about 16.8. So it's been a while since Yamaha, you know, has hiked their prices like that. But I think if ever there was a time that they were going to do it, you know, I think this 25 model WR250 is it, and you know, deservedly so. And I think the Yamaha guys should be really proud of what they've achieved with this thing. You know, I think it's actually going to sell them off too. And I've been saying forever, like I see so many guys get out in 350, 450, 500 or big bore 2-strokes. It would be way faster and have way more fun on the 250F. And you're going to look at a 250F in the bush these days, I think it's pretty hard to look past this thing sitting behind me.